This is the moment we've all been waiting for the thousands in attendance and the millions watching around the world. Let's get ready to
Welcome to the Junkyard Pod. I'm Tony Pesta, joined by my co-host Corey Walsh. You can find the Junkyard Pod wherever you get your podcasts, whether that's YouTube, Apple, or Spotify. We're trying to push the audio version of the pod a little more now that we are affiliated with Blue Wire, so go ahead and click the links in the description or search for us on Spotify and Apple under the name Write Down Euclid. And if you enjoy the show and you want to help us out, then that's all you got to do. Go follow us on those feeds and hit subscribe on YouTube if you aren't already. One last thing before we get into today's offseason and media day recap, we are running our first ever fantasy basketball league this season. In order to join, again, all you got to do is follow the pod on Spotify or Apple. Find me on Twitter, show me a screenshot that you're subscribed, and I'll get you added to our league. I think it's going to be a fun way to go throughout the season. We have a group chat on Twitter that we'll be using to keep in touch. And again, follow on Spotify and we'll get you added before our draft sometime next week. Now that that's all out of the way, let's start today's episode. We're just going to recap what the Cavs did this summer and where we stand entering the season, and then we'll talk a little bit about media day after that. Corey, it hasn't been the most eventful summer for the Cavs, but they did accomplish a few things. So what are your overall thoughts on what the Cavs did or didn't do this summer?
I think the overall sentiment is that people just look at roster transactions as the make or means of an offseason, but it's very clear that the Cavs were confident in the team that they had and that they felt the players were not the problem for this roster. It is clear that the coaching change to them was their seismic shift. They felt like they were one philosophy change away from this team reaching the heights that it could have. It's fair to say that the playoffs last year, though, also pointed out that we maybe weren't as deep as we thought as injuries kind of ravaged the roster. I don't know many teams that would have withstood the injuries that the Cavs had, but it definitely also kind of pointed out that we were a little more shallow on the bench than I think we thought going into the postseason. So you have to, I think the offseason is a success because I didn't think that the results were poor enough that it was worth scrapping and reshuffling the deck with this Cavs roster. I think bringing in Atkinson, kind of going for an offensive philosophy change, is something that's going to benefit this team a lot. Donovan Mitchell coming back is resigning his deal is also a huge boon for this roster. It kind of just also gets rid of a lot of the distractions that this team kind of had lingering over it halfway through the year. So the team succeeded in multiple facets, and they also, you can't go without saying that we withstood the Darius Garland might be heading out of town rumors that came almost instantly. We survived the hit piece that came out after the funeral of the roster. So overall, I think the offseason, while not like the flashiest, like it's nothing like the Lakers where they're taking up 5 slots on ESPN to talk about what changes happened to this team. But sometimes like not when do the most substantive seeming free agent periods ever result in championships? Not very often. So we should be happy that they weren't as reactionary as I think the fans wanted them to be.
Yeah, and I really like the direction you took there because, like, I understand why fans feel a little frustrated. Everyone wants this team to take that next step, and a blockbuster trade or a free agency signing, that's the shortcut to getting there. But I do think it's important not to ignore how many landmines they had to navigate to get to where we are now. The Mitchell extension was huge. That's a huge payoff for a massive bet they made 3 years ago. I was watching some of Game 7 against Orlando today, and like you forget, when we're down 18 points, Game 7 at home, like the writing was on the wall. It felt like this whole thing was going to come down and collapse. Mitchell was going to be gone. People forget how close to the edge we were. And so really every decision that they've made since getting Mitchell in that trade feels like it's been focused on getting him to commit long-term. And they won that commitment this summer. So that's giant. I think the reason why they've emphasized stability over the last few years was their attempt to keep Mitchell. It's hard to keep a star on your team if you descend into chaos. And so, I mean, even looking outside of the Mitchell extension, you mentioned, they dodged any severe fallout from Mitchell extending, where for a while it sounded like Darius might force a trade if Mitchell stayed here. The Athletic hit piece, of course. And since then, we've had a handful of quotes from DG denying those rumors and actions over words. Mitchell has extended and DG is still a Cavalier, so I'll believe him over the rumors for now. And even, securing Mobley to the max extension, retaining Okoro on a team-friendly deal, drafting Jalen Tyson, who we'll talk more about later, cleaning out the entire coaching staff and bringing in Kenny Atkinson was their big change. And overall, I would say the Cavs had a good offseason. It wasn't flashy. They didn't make a big splash. They didn't upgrade the team in like a clear, tangible way, but this summer was a win for stability and keeping their options open. There could still be some big moves on the horizon, but as of right now, the Cavs are a stable franchise with a really, really good team. I don't think Cleveland sports fans should take that for granted. It's nice to just be fun and good. The vibes are good, and I think that's a win overall.
Yeah, I think that it's kind of ironic that Cavs fans wanted this team to kind of react in the quick nature that they wanted it to. I think we kind of all forget that the thing that plagued this franchise for a long time was knee-jerk reactions. I mean, between the LeBron-less years of really trying to stay competitive and taking these huge swings that never really panned out in our favor, to LeBron years where we were complaining constantly that there was too much movement and that we were sacrificing too much for the now. And then we had to pay through those years with some poor years when he left for the second time. But then suddenly when this team played as competitively as I think they could have against the Boston Celtics with the skeleton crew, they were kind of limping out there, that they wanted this team to kind of take a massive swing and just change everything. And I think it's kind of something that we should appreciate more, that the team seems like they're more level-headed and less reactionary to thinking that, oh, we were in the Eastern semifinals and we should probably try to take that next step and punch above by maybe making a massive swing that could work in our favor. Nothing in the NBA is really guaranteed. Do we know if the Knicks are really going to become that much better of a team with Karl-Anthony Towns than if they kept Randall and DiVincenzo? That's something that you will truly never know. And we could be sitting here while they won the offseason in terms of headlines. We don't know that this is going to be something that by June of next year, we're going to be saying the Knicks absolutely succeeded. They could fall flat on their face for reasons that we don't know either. So we could be saying the thing about the Cavs that, hey, it was actually the smartest thing to just kind of stay even keeled, bring in a new coach, make a slight change that's going to make ripples throughout the roster, let this team develop a little more. They're a younger team. And then we can kind of see where we're at next season. We're not really no longer with this Donovan Mitchell game of let's just expedite everything and move fast.
Yeah, and that's everyone, again, wants that shortcut. You want to see the team take that next step in a tangible way over the summer. But again, I think there's value in just not messing things up. Like if they had traded for Brandon Ingram this summer and that doesn't work out, what's the next step? Then things are really falling apart because you've gone all in on, well, not necessarily all in, but you've made a big move, taken a big swing and missed. You bring up the Knicks, they took their big swing. They took two big swings this summer. Now I think most people feel more comfortable with the Mikal Bridges trade, but Karl-Anthony Towns, it could work out really well or it could be a disaster. The Cavs have kind of just held on to their chips a little bit longer. And again, big moves could still come in the future. It could be at the deadline. It could be next summer. As of right now, they just chose to run it back, maintain stability, and see what we can get out of this team with a new coach and a fresh approach to the offense, which really is what they've been missing. They're an elite team defensively. The offense has always been the thing holding them back, so they bring in an offensive-minded head coach. And look, I'm not going to take a victory lap or moral victories over a gentleman's sweep against Boston, but even with how horrible the Cavs, how horrible the season you got from Darius Garland, the injuries that ravaged this team to the point where even Donovan Mitchell was out when it mattered most, and they still played Boston as tough as any other team. Again, I know it's a 5-game series, so I'm not like, woo, yeah, they really pushed them to the brink there, but they played them as good as just about any other team, and so they're healthy coming into the year. Brand new coach, new offensive system, maybe things start to click and they hit the ground running. Whereas other teams like New York, they got a lot to figure out now. They made a whole bunch of changes. They could have some growing pains. Philadelphia got a lot better on paper, but Paul George and Joel Embiid. If either one of them gets injured, that changes the outlook for them. Boston is still the only Titan in the East, I would say. Every other team, there's just kind of this glut where the Cavs are in the mix with a whole bunch of other teams, and everyone's waiting for the Cavs to separate themselves. That's why you wanted to see a big trade or a free agency acquisition. But right now they've just stayed in the race, and I think that's good enough.
Yeah, you don't want to just win like flashiest headline. You want to like the Cavs. I've seen all the predictions of the Cavs kind of being somewhere around the 5-6. And I think that's more a product of them not like entertaining the media with their offseason. Like nothing was flashy, nothing like kind of makes it be like, oh, we need to think of them differently. They're going to think of the team that they saw last season, even though this coaching change with Atkinson is going to change up a lot. And you kind of think, well, the team also won't be, it will be kind of hard. I don't want to like jinx the team, but it'll be hard to replicate the injury luck that they kind of had last season with this season. And you'd have to think that alone will show significant growth. Yes, the East in general is better. It's getting better. Teams are making moves in the East. There's young teams on the rise, but I think the Cavs are in a very good position to be very competitive in this Eastern Conference. And the worst thing that could have happened is that we move one of our pieces too fast, like Garland or Allen, and we don't even see what they look like in an Atkinson offense. Like their value could be so much more, even from a trade perspective, by seeing how they perform in this, but also as a team, like not seeing what this team could look like under different coaching could be something that you would regret for seasons to come.
Yeah, I think there's just the patient, cautious approach. Again, I know it's frustrating, but I like it personally because there hasn't been a move out there or any player that's been dangled in front of them that like you can't pass up on. Again, I'm not saying this to pick on Brandon Ingram, but like I think the odds that Cleveland looks back a few years from now and be like, that was the moment they blew it. They should have traded for Ingram. Like that's not going to happen. So maybe ultimately they do have to trade Allen or you do have to trade Garland at some point, but right now the players who they've passed up on aren't like you're not gonna look back in 5 years and be like they should have traded for Brandon Ingram. Maybe I'll be way wrong on that. This will be a freezing cold take, but I think the patient approach, I don't have a problem with it so far. They could still make moves in the near future, but I do want to transition to media day now, and we'll do just rapid fire fashion rundown of what happened because look, the other podcasts have already covered media day. You've seen the Twitter threads, Chasedown, It's Cavalier, Locked On. They've done their pods. They've beat us to the punch. So I'm not going to repeat anything for our Cavs fans, for our Cavs sickos who have already heard all that. But I do want to hit on some of the key takeaways. And also, we have some Jackson Flickinger exclusives. Our good friend and co-host Jackson was able to share some interviews that weren't on the YouTube feed yesterday because they had a lot going on the YouTube feed. They had a lot of people going up to the podium at the same time. And so Jackson managed to get us some stuff from Tyson and Max Strus that I'll bring up. And, when he wasn't busy talking to Sam Merrill, he was actually doing some good journalistic work. So thank you, Jackson. And if anyone is wondering, Jackson isn't with us because he's in Florida at training camp. So hopefully we'll get more out of him soon. But focusing on media day, Corey, was there anything that stood out to you? Any quotes or anything?
I think the overall tone of the press conference or the media day was what really stood out to me. It became pretty apparent to me pretty quickly that this team really believes that they were a coach away from becoming a different team. It felt like it was emphasized a lot about how this new Atkinson offense should really open things up for a lot of the players, whether it was Donovan, Merrill, Strus, Garland. Offense was kind of the name of the game with this media day. A lot of questions were centered around it, but a lot of their answers also came back to how they feel like this offense is going to take another step with this Atkinson coaching change, which is good to hear. You want the players to buy in immediately off the ground. I mean, Donovan was saying how Atkinson was texting him at like 3 a.m. talking about offensive movement. And that really was what got Mitchell really excited and bought in about Atkinson on this roster, which you would have to think that Donovan Mitchell played a huge factor in Atkinson kind of being on this roster. I don't think the team was going to make a move without Donovan Mitchell being fully bought in, but it seems like everyone else from the top to the bottom of this roster is also very excited by what this can unlock. And I think it's a good tonal shift because I think we came out of the last season, kind of everyone obviously had a sour taste in their mouth with the coaching regime. And we've argued on this pod, maybe it was a year too late, like we could have done it the year before, but it's good to know that this team feels like it's taking a step in a different direction. And I'm excited to see if this is the right step for this group.
Yeah, again, the fact that the vibes feel this good entering the season when there were so many ways that this summer could have been a disaster, that's a win for me. And, Atkinson is the big difference. That's the big change they made. Tyson is their new addition, who I want to talk about later. But there were a couple standouts that I want to hit on really quickly. One that was shocking is that Allen told us that he has a piece of bone floating around in his body from the rib injury. It was a lot worse than anyone thought, I guess. The Twitter doctors didn't catch that bone in their exam. They just completely missed that one. Darius Garland shot down the trade rumors, and he also said that he's regained the weight he lost from his jaw injury, which we all were hoping and expecting. And he even said he can't wait to show off those muscles by driving to the rim more this season, which I like to hear. Donovan Mitchell told us he loves Cleveland for the millionth time, and I'm not complaining. He can say it as often as he wants. I just found it funny how he keeps saying, I love Cleveland. I keep saying that I want to be here, but no one really seems to believe me like that. I found that really funny. I believe him. That's nothing new to me, but some people had trouble believing that one. One of our Jackson exclusives, during Max Strus, his time at the podium, someone asked him what his game day playlist looks like, and Strus responded that he listens to a lot of sad and depressing music. So that seems kind of fitting, honestly. He was like, music doesn't really get me going. I listen to Noah Khan and Mount Joy. So he said his motivation is just the sheer competitive nature of basketball. And that sounds like a Max Strus answer to me.
What a summer for Max Strus, between the Bachelorette girl shooting his shot with him. Now he's a Noah Khan guy. I mean, his stock's going up. Maybe not on the floor, but off the floor. Vibes are incredible for Max Strus.
Max Strus Island is seeing. It's been a great season for tourists. Of course, we got another round of quotes that we kind of expected about Darius and Evan. They're looking to make a leap. They want to increase their 3-point shooting, increase Evan's usage, all the same stuff that we hope to see last year is being emphasized again. Evan grew a beard, so that's new. That's one thing that has changed. And again, the big difference is obviously Kenny Atkinson, a new coach bringing in a new style, and maybe that pushes Mobley and Garland into new roles for real this time. Maybe, it seems like everyone's bought into Atkinson top to bottom, and I'm really excited to see what he can do with the offense. I think we'll see a more inclusive approach to building the offense. He said he wants to play 10 to 11 guys, which I know some people were very excited about that after JB. To his credit, he tried to expand the rotation as much as he could, but he kind of always fell back to that 8-man group. And also, shout out to JB. He's getting Lamar Stevens back. I'm sure he's happy about that.
Can't believe he was available.
Yeah, he couldn't believe it. But Atkinson, his approach to offense has always been inclusive. He wants everyone to be involved. Another quote that stood out is he wants Mobley downhill rather than playing with his back to the basket, which is something we have been talking about on the show. Atkinson will want more ball movement, more 3-point shooting, and this is all good stuff. And I expect it will make a difference. I do think the Cavs will look different this year. As far as media day goes, it was mostly the same stuff I expected to hear, but I am expecting the Cavs to look a little bit different than they did last year.
Yeah, I liked hearing from Mobley specifically because I think a lot of the offseason stuff with Atkinson was saying how it was kind of this whole decision was also centered around Mobley's development. It became pretty apparent the regime was pretty disappointed with how Mobley, I think, offensively has turned out. Defensively, obviously, there's no problem with Mobley whatsoever. But we've heard for a few media days how Mobley's going to take this next step offensively. And we kind of had to nitpick the improvement last year in certain facets of his game, trying to find a reason to buy in that there was actual growth. Not really as a criticism of Mobley, but a player can only do as much as he's being developed. And if they're not focusing him in the right areas, then that's not really on the player for why his development's not going the way that people expect. It's more an indictment on the coaching staff. And hearing Mobley talk about how he's going to be trailing more in fast breaks for more above the break opportunities, that's going to be something that's exciting because I think we've all seen and we've talked about at length that Mobley's connective tissue ability is one of his most underrated skills, I think, because it's been underutilized. It feels like it's more of the backdoor cut Okoro thing where it's we have to point it out and be excited when it rarely occurs versus something that we think could be seeing more naturally. And it obviously works. So why aren't we pressing that button more times than not? So hopefully just seeing Mobley kind of become like a secondary playmaker on this offense more consistently, or even sometimes maybe being the primary on certain situations, is something that I really look forward to. And based off of media day, I now have like an expectation in my mind that that's where we're going to be talking about in like October, November, just how Mobley is really jumping off the page offensively.
Yeah, that was the big thing to me, was that Atkinson quote about wanting to get Mobley downhill. And again, we've talked about this so much, but like Mobley is not a back to the basket player. He's really not even like a great pick and roll threat right now, just because he doesn't set the best screens and the paint is kind of cluttered. And so you need to establish a home in the short roll. You need to get him catching the ball with some room to operate, and rather than just trying to get him around the basket, which obviously is his strength. Like, of course you want Mobley around the basket as much as possible, but for this team to reach their ceiling, they need Mobley to expand his game, whether that's shooting threes or just handling the ball. And of course, it's just the offseason. They're saying all the right things. We'll see if it translates to the regular season, but so far they're saying all the right things, right? And we're seeing the offseason videos of Mobley draining three-pointers. The jumper does look faster. It does look a little bit better. Again, how that translates, we'll have to see. But like, I just want to see Mobley attempt to do these things, because before it seemed like he was in such a refined, restricted role. You barely ever saw him attempt a three-pointer. You barely ever saw him bring the ball up the floor or be used in these ways. And because Atkinson is emphasizing these things, and he has a track record of playing an offense that is more inclusive, I hope that we see Mobley attempt to do these things, because I don't expect him to shoot 40% from three next season, but I need to see him get at least 3 or 4 three-pointers up there. I need to see him start to take steps in that direction. And I do think we could see the breakout season from Mobley statistically that we've been wanting to see. You mentioned that, we had to kind of nitpick the improvements that we saw. It did look like he improved, but as far as the stats go, like nothing really showed up. It wasn't emphasized in the way that you'd like to see. I think this could be the year that happens, especially if Atkinson is empowering him the way that it seems like he will.
Yeah, and you brought up a good point with talking about how we kind of feel like some of these Cavs players, and this is a point that Jackson, I feel like, has made a few times. So to credit our insider Jackson, who's not here, the Cavs as a whole, I feel like offensively, each player kind of felt that was a homegrown player, like a Darius and Okoro and Evan. These players come into the Cavs and they excel at one skill, and then it's almost as if they're trapped in this box of like they only are able to flourish in this one skill. And the Cavs really struggled on how to fully develop these players and make them more complete basketball players. Jackson always says like how Okoro wasn't really a basketball player. He was just more of a guy who would stand in the corner, shoot and defend, and that's it. I think that's the thing that should jump off the page most immediately when we watch the Cavs this year, if this offseason went the way that I think Atkinson wants it to go. And maybe it's something that might take a little more time, but the biggest sign that Atkinson is making an impact on this roster, and it's something that I feel like players were also really hammering in their answers, is that they just feel more free in this offense. And I'm hoping that this like unshackles a lot of the players to the point where we're going to just kind of be astounded seeing these players play so freely and kind of realize how incomplete our offense felt for the past few years.
Yeah, that'll be the key to me, is just seeing if they play with more freedom, if they look more comfortable stepping out of their comfort zone. That'll be the big difference. And then the last thing that is totally different this year, other than coaching, is the addition of Jalen Tyson. Now, I know Cavs fans have some mixed expectations for Tyson, but objectively, this is something new for us all to analyze and take in. Media Day was his formal introduction. And now, so he had his interview with John Michael during the broadcast that we were all able to see, but he did have time on the podium as well. That, again, shout out to Jackson, NBA insider. Look out, Adrian Wojnarowski. That spot is open. Jackson's coming for it.
My God.
But no, he did send me this transcript of that. And I thought there was a few quotes from both his time at the podium and with John Michael that I thought were worth sharing. So Tyson, unsurprisingly, said he feels he's one of the best rookies in his class. That's, every rookie says that. But he also said he's modeling his game after Caleb Martin and Josh Hart, which really stood out to me. He also joked that the coaches have been telling him, hey, if you hit those corner threes, you're going to make yourself a lot of money. And Tyson was like, all right, I'm in. Let's do it. Like, let's just focus on that. But most of all, putting it all together, to me, Tyson just sounded like he had the perfect mixture of confidence and self-awareness. It seems like he fully believes in himself while understanding the role that he's going to be expected to play. It's kind of like if Dion Waiters was fully committed to being the best role player he could possibly be rather than like league MVP. And so The last quote that really stood out to me that he said during his time on the podium was, quote, "I just feel like I'm a winner. And if you're a winner, you can plug in anywhere. I'm willing to adjust," end quote. And again, using Hart and Martin as comparisons just felt perfect for that and for this team. But Corey, what was your reaction to Tyson's media availability?
I thought Tyson said all the right things. Like he's very well spoken when he was speaking. I totally believed he meant everything he said, whether it was ranged from saying he's one of the best in the draft class to that he could fit everywhere. But it's something with Tyson that I really like what he can bring to the table. I wonder how long it's going to take is the question. And I know that we talked about this earlier in our group chat for the Junkyard Pod on Twitter. If you haven't, you guys should join it.
Yeah, go join it.
Very intense Tyson discussion within there, but I think the question with Tyson is how long will it take to adapt? Because Tyson is very accustomed right now, and we saw it in Summer League, to where he is really used to kind of being the guy who beats the drum for the offense. And we saw in his first 3 games with the Summer League team that he kind of faded away as the game went on when his touches weren't as constant. It's obvious that he excels on ball. He has good skills on ball. He can make good reads. He's good at attacking the glass. He's a good 3-level scorer. But like he said, like he's bought into the ways that he needs to win. And the way that this team's going to win is by Tyson accepting that he's not going to be one of the guys who gets fed consistently. It's going to be spots. He's going to have to be in the right spots. He's going to have to work on his offensive IQ, really understand completely this Atkinson offense, understanding where to be. But he has a lot of what I'd like to call like soft skills for the NBA that should make it that if his shot's not falling, it's not going to become like the Isaac Okoro conundrum, where if his 3-point shot's not falling, offenses will have no reason to kind of man mark him. He's a tenacious rebounder, which is why I really liked the Josh Hart comp. I also made him that comp a week ago for our player preview for him, that he can mold himself because he's very aggressive on offensive glass. He's capable in the defensive glass of bringing the ball down the court and kind of setting up other players that way. It's really with Tyson, like he just I think there should be a role for him off the bat. It's the question of, is he going to be able to adjust to not getting as many shot attempts to get going? Because he's like that Russell Westbrook type shot profile where sometimes it takes him like 4 or 5 shots to get going offensively. But once that he finds his groove, he'll get going. The question is he going to get enough shots to find that groove, or is he going to have to adapt and find ways to get going with limited shots?
Yeah, I expect there's going to be an adjustment period for him. We probably will see growing pains again. He's the 20th pick in the draft, so I don't want to get carried away. We got to take this one step at a time. The first goal is just being a rotational player throughout the regular season. Everything else will probably come farther down the line for him, but I am very excited. I'm all the way in on his long-term development to becoming a good rotational player in the NBA. Not saying he'll be a star, but look, if he becomes Josh Hart, that's a huge win. I do think he has a multifaceted skill set. You mentioned a lot of soft skills. He can do a lot of things to help a basketball team. And if he's coming in with this mentality of like, I'm going to be a winner and just do whatever it takes to win, that's what you want to hear. And Hart and Martin are great examples of that, the type of player that you want him to be. And I even think he has more offensive juice than both of those players. Now we'll see how that pans out. I think both of them are better defenders, at least coming into the league. So I'm not saying that he's going to be better than either one of those guys, but it's certainly a good model for him to follow. And he has the offensive potential to maybe even be like an upgraded version of those guys. So I'm excited. I'm in on the long-term development. Again, one step at a time. But you said it perfectly. I mean, he said all the right things during media day, and he had a great end to the summer league. So I'm very, very excited to see how he looks with the Cavs.
Yeah, the arrow is definitely trending up. I don't want people to think that I'm anti-Tyson. It's just fair for a team with the expectations that the Cavs have, that they're not going to just slot in the 20th pick in the draft into their, even though I think the Atkinson 10-11 got the gears turning for a lot of people, thinking like, oh my God,
gasoline on the fire.
Being like, where in the lineup is he going to be? He's obviously like 8th or 9th, forgetting that we have like players that have been in the team way longer that I think have built up a little more credibility on the roster. It's fair to be excited for Jalen Tyson, but it's also equally as fair to be excited to see what like Sam Merrill and Dean Wade are going to be like in an Atkinson offense. I think boredom of players you've seen for years and years can make it so you kind of forget what these players are capable of. You don't need a Dean Wade level explosion game for you to be reminded that Dean Wade is a good basketball player. And you'll see that, I think, with this Atkinson offense.
Yeah, we don't need a Travis Kelce bobblehead night to remind us of who Dean Wade is. But no, that's why I keep highlighting the long-term game for Tyson, because first season, look, it could be very much like a Craig Porter type of situation where he'll get opportunities when there's injuries and there's, openings for him to get in there. There's a lot of guys ahead of him that he'll have to beat out for a spot in the rotation. Even just the 8-man rotation, Okoro, Levert, probably Wade. Like, I get there's some debate there, but like those are established guys who have either been with the team for a while or been in the NBA for a long time. And like, it's just not every day the 20th pick in the draft slides right in to a playoff contender and is like, I'm in the rotation, especially the playoff rotation. I think we'll see him get some regular season opportunities. Again, Craig Porter's like a good, not a good blueprint for like the type of player he is, but for the minutes and the role that you'll probably get from him. I think he'll get spot minutes, he'll get opportunities. And I hope that he, like Craig Porter last year, I hope Tyson takes full advantage of them and really starts to show and prove that he can adjust to an off-ball role.
I'm just waiting for Cavs Twitter to go ballistic when Ozempic Niang steps onto the floor before Jalen Tyson does. And the fandom's just going to be like, this is ridiculous. And it's going to become like the JB thing all over again, where it's the meme of like, Cavs are down 10. What do we do? Put Niang in. It's just going to be, they're going to riot. It's going to be awful. So I can just see it.
People are going to riot, and I might stoke the flames sometimes because I'll get frustrated too. Even though I know better, I'll get frustrated too. I'll be like, man, why is Niang out there? Get something new in there.
You got to reward his offseason regimen. The dude's lost weight. We think.
Exactly.
It's all the angles.
It looks like it, but it's impossible to know. I guess
only Cavs insider Jackson Flickinger can ask those hard-hitting questions. Jackson, if you're listening, ask Niang what his offseason regimen was.
Yeah. Again, Niang is going to be a part of the rotation, at least opening day. I wouldn't expect Tyson to lap him too quickly. As much as Cavs fans might want that, I do think they've invested into Niang a little bit, and they're hoping for a bounce-back season from him.
If you listened to Atkinson say 10 to 11 players and you thought Niang was the 12th player, you might need to look in the mirror and realize you have a problem.
As much as we all feel that way, sometimes Niang is definitely he's in the discussion to be in the 8-man rotation, but we can have that conversation another time. For now, that's going to do it for this episode of the Junkyard Pod. Like I said at the top, you can find us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts under the name Write Down Euclid. I'll have links in the description so you can find it, no problem. If you want to join our fantasy league, hit me on Twitter with a screenshot showing you've subscribed on those platforms and we'll get you added. As of recording, we have 10 teams already in the league and the draft is set for Sunday, October 13th. So you don't want to miss out on this. Again, if you enjoy the Junkyard Pod, you know the drill. Hit subscribe, drop a like, and leave a comment on what you thought about the Cavs offseason or the media day takeaways. We'd love to hear your thoughts. And with all that being said, go Cavs.
I agree. Go Cavs. Brian, if you're listening, help Jackson become the new Woj.